hail to me? Because I'm getting absolutely pounded with hail right now down in Texas.
Oh, yeah, hail's cool. So it seems weird that hail only forms in the summertime, but the reason is because you need the really giant cumulonimbus clouds, and those don't form in the winter because it's too dry. There isn't enough moisture to it. So a cumulonimbus cloud forms because you either have just a pocket of hot air that rises, or you have hot and cold fronts that run into each other, and the warm front, which has a lot of moisture because hot air has more moisture in it, goes up. But anyways, that actually creates really strong vertical drafts of wind, or like updrafts they're called. So that hailstone, even in the summertime, it's so cold up there that a lot of rain starts off as snow. What that hailstone is like a little tiny snowflake starts to try to fall, and a cumulonimbus cloud can be like a couple miles tall.
Yeah, it'd be like
It's
60,000 feet, something like
Yeah,
that.
it starts to fall, but the updrafts pick it up again. So you have this snowflake that's going through all of this moisture in the cloud, and so it just literally keeps growing, and eventually it gets so big that it's too heavy for the updrafts to keep it afloat, and then it finally falls. That's how hail forms.
So when you get like the golf ball size hails, it just like the winds are so strong up there that it's just keeping it up, and then eventually it's just too heavy and it drops.
Yep.
That's cool. That's cool. Thanks, dude. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Oh, you're very welcome. Funny enough, somebody who one of the first people to like scientifically describe the way we're pretty sure precipitation forms was Alfred Wegener, who was a meteorologist who came up with continental drift, and so he's the father of plate tectonics theory. Hashtag science fact. What up, Derek?
How's it going, man?
Fine.
I'm driving. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Right on. Well, first, I wanted to just express a ton of gratitude because I love your channel and I watch your live pretty regularly, and I think your approach is pretty awesome. But there's one thing I've been wanting to join for a while, and I don't know why I kind of got shy about it because I'm a public speaker. But um, I- one of the questions that I've been kind of pondering for a bit revolves around my own spirituality. And so I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and a huge staple within the program is this, this kind of like almost culty, you know, representation of like how necessary it is for you to have a higher power.
Yeah.
And I went
Well, to
to, I
believe
went,
in one. Yeah.
or to believe in one, exactly. And they don't necessarily define one for you, which is a relief in a way, because I went to 12 years of Roman Catholic school growing up that I fucking hated, for the record. And I left the church as soon as I graduated high school because I'm like, I don't really resonate with any of this, because I had half a brain on me, and the Catholic school system made me smart enough to critically think for myself. Ironically enough, to get past the indoctrination that they were trying to feed me my whole childhood, and the higher power that I, since being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, have found is Gaia, which loosely, I'm sure you know, is
The
the
living
colloquial
earth.
way to, yeah, the colloquial way that I explain it to people is that she's Mother Earth or Mother Nature, or whatever kind of representation you want. And that seemed and still seems like a decent middle ground for me between my logical, science-based, um, like observations of what I've learned, and also the kind of like just enough doubt within me about the things within the universe that we can't quite understand. And lately, I've been noticing just exactly how much we do understand about the universe, and I think that's awesome. To the point that I got Gargantua from Interstellar tattooed on my arm, and and I think that when the really kind of trigger point for me is dark matter and dark energy, and as it pertains to like one of the few things about the universe that we truly won't understand until we get to the other side of a gravitational singularity. Do you have any thoughts there?
About that in particular, no. thoughts about the Gaia hypothesis? Well,
Sure.
I mean, life, like, you could, I could probably convince myself that Earth is a planet, or that Earth is a planet. Oh, jeez, that the planet Earth is a living thing. And
Sure.
I've actually gone over this before in my head because what Earth doesn't do, and will never do, is replicate, and all life that we know does that, right? But it's you can think of
Okay.
Earth like an organism in a way. Now, Earth is so like take a human being for example. It may seem silly, like Earth is like there are organisms that live on Earth which are discrete things. They are alive. The Earth is not alive. Well, I think human beings exist, but technically, what a human being is every one of my cells, because we know that has actually happened before. Henrietta Lacks's cells are continuing living without her, without a nervous system, without anything. They're called, I can't remember what they're called. They're not called HeLa cell. There's something with like HeLa in the name, I think, but whatever. But also humans are obligate symbiotes, which means there are other organisms that collectively live within us and on us that we can't live without. So certain bacteria and things like that. So they're literally not human. They don't have human DNA. They're structurally not part of us, but we cannot live without them. So that's kind of
Sure.
creepy. Now, another thing you would say is like, yeah, but Earth is so much different because even if you want to call Earth alive, Earth just has a very thin film of living material on it. The Earth isn't alive. And it's like, well, I'm composed mostly of water, and water certainly isn't alive, right? I'm just a thing that I'm just a collection of matter that does life. You know,
Sure.
so there are
Now,
there
do you,
are interesting ways you can try to uh, make Earth seem so much like an organism and relate it to like the way you as an organism is structured, and it's fun to think about.
yeah, and I think the only part of that that's compelling for me when you think of Earth as a within its own like planetary system, when you think of it as a living organism, the only part of that that's compelling for me is that it does have a life cycle. Like planets, even planets that contain life, or moons or celestial bodies that contain life. Like now we're learning a whole lot about Io and Enceladus, and now Mars before us, and things like that. And I think that the only part of that's compelling for me is that it they have inevitabilities within their life cycle. Like even planets have, quote unquote, birth and death, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I don't know. That was cool to think about. The noise is getting kind of loud, so I think I'm going to drop you down. But thanks for coming up.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. All right, we got boxing glove up next.
Hey, why do you say the God hypothesis is useless cope?
Because I don't think it can explain anything.
Well, I think it's one thing to say that if it's real or not, but to say that it's useless, I don't think it's useless.
Epistemologically, I do.
Well, the thing is, for a lot of people, it brings out a lot of good in them. Like it helps them grieve better, it gives them hope in life, it gives them structure in life.
Yep,
So whether
that's
it's
not
real or not is
epistemology.
one thing. Sorry, what'd you
Yep,
say?
yep, that's not what I'm concerned with. And that's not epistemology.
Okay.
Yep, and I mean, on balance, I think if we believed in less superstitious stuff like that, we would actually be better off as a as a species, really. So even if it gives people comfort, I think that there's a much, much, much better possible world where it doesn't exist.
I don't know about that because for like, if you don't believe in a higher power, which, you know, for a lot of people, I feel like that's like, like their life becomes so much better with that. You know what I mean?
That So you're literally describing cope.
Yeah, but why are you saying it's useless though?
Because what because other than validating your feelings, which so again, I really actually only care about like this is what I do is about like evidence and science and stuff like that. And with respect to those things, it's useless.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. But
Yes.
like in society, I don't think it's useless though. But I respect your point.
I could make an extremely good argument that we'd be better off without it. Just because something has a purpose doesn't mean that it's good, and just because something is part of history doesn't mean that it's good. That's typically called a genetic fallacy. But
All right, fair enough. I just wanted to discuss that with you, but
oh yeah, no
take it easy,
problem.
man. Yeah.
I will do my best. And then I burped. And then I hiccuped. I'm all over the place.
Hey, can you hear
Dylan?
me? Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, how are you again?
I'm fine.
What's up? Yeah, just a quick question. So in terms of like evolution, I know you don't like too much of the philosophy stuff. What do you think about like behaviorism and like empirical evidence of moral agency and other social animals, like non-human animals?
Uh, what do I think about them?
Yeah, like do you think there's enough like empirical data like regarding like bonobos, orcas, and like dolphins to suggest that they have some form of like moral agency with respect to their own societies?
Moral agency. I mean, I think that that's a little bit loaded because, I mean, that's just a term we invented. So, can they have it? Can I think what would be better is do they do the same kinds of things that we do instinctually, right? And
Yeah,
with like, okay, so I don't necessarily think that they uh, rationalize about it. Maybe not necessarily, or not to the degree that we do, I guess. But I don't know. There's really extremely good evidence of that animals have an intrinsic sense of fairness. There's an absolutely hilarious video of capuchin monkeys. You can see that they put them in cages side by side and they have them do a task and they get a food reward for it. And when one monkey is given a better food reward than the other one will burst into a rage and refuse to cooperate. There are other experiments that show that monkeys will share food rewards with other monkeys for doing certain tasks. And you may say, well, yeah, but they're just like reacting and it's just instinctual and blah, blah, blah. Well, just because we have words about it doesn't mean that we're not doing the same thing. And even if a behavior is learned, I don't think that like can't a learned behavior also like isn't learning instinctual in and of itself. So that would just be that just kind of opens up another can of worms where now we're failing to now we're just arguing about what is the definition of words, which is why philosophy annoys me so much.
yeah.
um
But that's
elephants do the same thing. Elephants will cooperate in order to accomplish a task where they both get a reward for it, and things of that nature. What's really interesting, I don't have it, it's in the other room. I just finished a book by a philosopher called Other Minds, and it's a study about octopuses and how they have such crazy intelligence, but their nervous system is completely different than ours, and they diverged from us like 600 million years ago, evolutionarily speaking. So how do we try to understand where a mind that can understand things comes from by looking at other organisms? That's kind of like one of the premises of the book. It's really interesting. But one thing he talked about, this wasn't, I don't remember if he said much about this with respect to the octopus, but with chimpanzees and I'm not sure if they've done this with other monkeys, but I thought this was really fascinating. So I I'm not gonna. I thought this over in my head on my way to work. I was like, okay, so I got a case I could make. So how do I say this? A human, part of the big thing about being a human and what makes us unique is, like, what does it mean to be able to have an internal thought, like a voice in your head, this conscious experience? Even though I don't know what it is, what would it what kind of characteristics does it have, and what does it result in? So you take like ordinary matter. Ordinary matter cannot do things deliberately, by which I mean perform an action that it thought about. A rock can only erode. Now it's interacting with its environment, but there's no planning going on there. I'm not really sure if a bacteria can do something more unique than that. Obviously, they move around and there's some type of agency. And like the philosopher Daniel Dennett says, bacteria do things for a reason because they're organisms, but they don't have reasons for doing things. That's very different.
Yeah,
Now,
like sentient responses and things like that.
right, like a sentient response. There's this guy, he used to go by Shark Wahlberg. I'm not sure what he calls himself anymore, but he does
This
this
idea shark now.
he does this thing where he says, "Prove you're conscious, win $1,000." And I think there's a really interesting study with chimpanzees that, to me, proves consciousness, proves that they have consciousness. It doesn't prove what it is, but what they do was they take these chimps and they hang some food from a string that they can't reach, but there are boxes in the room. The chimpanzees will stack the boxes to go and get the food. That's not trial and error. What's going on is the chimps are looking at what's in their environment and deciding or knowing before they've done this thing that if they do that, they'll get what they want. Whatever consciousness is, you can't do something like that and not have it. So there's,
Like
I should write this all
instrumental
down so it
rationality and
flows
stuff.
better, but that's sort of it.
No, yeah. Like instrumental rationality. I think that's like a big thing in behaviorism. Because I had a talk with him too. We were talking about mostly like Ivan Pavlov with his dogs training and things like that. But we also bring up, there was like another experiment done with monkeys, or not even an experiment. It was just an observation done when, certain types of monkeys defecated near their homes and stuff like that. They would make tools to help them like shovel away from their homes or where they're sleeping from. And so that just kind of like shows that there's like some intention or some goal in mind on behalf of like the monkey in question or something like that. So, I guess that's why I was like asking, like, when we're questioning just like what morality is, I'm not sure why the human sense of morality is going to be any different than instinct, like you were saying. So I'm not sure why we would say things like
Yeah, there's
bonobos, which have these behaviors, are different than us.
I don't have the thought very well developed, but reading that book, I thought about something else, which was, why are humans so smart and why do we have such gargantuan, grotesque brains? Well, it's not so that we can do mathematics or have culture or invent grammar or anything like that, because it precedes those things. What it is it's a result of it's a result of the extreme demand for us to be able to be good at social interactions. And to be very good at social interactions, you need to be able to understand the other party, right? So this is where like an idea of a theory of mind plays in. Like Coco, the gorilla that was taught sign language, one of the key things that people bring up about that is the gorilla never learned to ask any questions, because the gorilla probably didn't understand that anything else that exists has the capability of like doesn't understand that it's a potential resource in that kind of way, like a resource in the sense of it has thoughts too, and so a problem that you have in your mind, another mind could help you solve it, if that made any sense. But I think that What was the original question? Now I don't remember. Whatever. I'm just going to try to finish this thought and maybe I'll fail miserably. But in the process of being able to better understand those like social cues or whatever, I think sort of a side effect of that was we then began to understand ourselves even more. And then that's where all the introspective thoughts come from, right? And so from there, now I don't remember what you asked. I had something to go on with that, but now I don't remember what it was.
Just basically like why we think, like if we're taking like the anthropic principle and just saying like we're looking at us and we're looking at other animals to determine whether they have something, and it is instinctual for them. Why is it not instinctual for us? The same way that we can say that these animals also share these similar traits.
Mm-hmm. I didn't hear the question in there. Sorry.
Just, I guess it was like more of like I guess I was just questioning like what your intuition on that, because I know some people like don't like behaviorism as like a theory of like mind or something like that along those lines.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't have much else to say about it, I guess.
All right, that's cool. Thank you. That was all I wanted to ask. Have a good one.
You're welcome. Or thank you also. Hello?
Hello.
What's up?
How are you doing tonight?
I don't know. Fine, I think.
So is this like does it have to be like a debate kind of conversation?
Doesn't have to be. That's usually where it ends up going.
Okay. I was just wondering, like, what are your thoughts on AI? Just last night, I watched the movie Transcendence, and that came out in 2011. You ever seen that one?
I've never even heard of that one.
Basically, like, a guy gets injured, and then his wife uploads his consciousness to a like supercomputer, and then there's this terrorist group that want to stop it because they say this is a big danger. And basically, they end up making this complex in the middle of nowhere, and there was just I lost my train of thought. But basically, I was just wondering what your thoughts were on AI. Like, do you think sentient kind of development is possible, or is it just?
I had a long conversation. I did a podcast actually with a computer scientist, and we talked about this. I don't really remember what he said very well, but he basically made the case that it is sentient because of like what it can do. You'd have to listen to him talk about it because I'm just gonna butcher it terribly. I'm pretty sure, but like, could it be conscious? I suppose. Is that bad? Well, he had some really interesting takes on why that would be, why that could be like a serious moral problem. Again, I don't remember what any of them were to be able to articulate it well because this isn't something I think about, and it's not something I have very much education in. But, yeah, in terms of like what I can say is I'm not one of the people that worries about AI myself. Not really.
So you don't think, like, in general, could be more of a risk?
No, I don't, because I mean, like at the end of the day, I don't think the AI is going to do something unless humans choose to use it in that sort of way. Because I just don't really see. I've never been compelled by the idea that artificial intelligence would want or desire to do anything, you know?
Yeah.
Now it's possible. I mean, it's kind of like nuclear weapons. I don't like nuclear weapons at all. I wish we didn't have any of them, but I'm not against the science, the kind of science that leads you to understanding, or that leads you to the level of understanding that allows you to build a nuclear bomb. I don't wish that we never learned that kind of science, because like the benefits from it are unquestionably great as well. And so with the whole AI thing, I don't know. It doesn't worry me, I guess.
It's just, I mean, it looks a lot different now than it did only 10 years ago. So, like, we don't really know how it could advance to in, say, 20 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the other thing is humans are extremely bad at predicting the future. Um, for example, Thomas Edison thought that the phonograph would be used. All of his predictions about it were hilariously wrong. He thought that it would be uh, like secretaries would use it to record notes. He actually was probably the first person to imagine the audiobook because he thought that that's what it would be used for. People would read books and record them and listen to them. He had all these like very industrious, practical ideas for what will happen with it. And it turns out, no, we just like literally use them to listen to music because like, they couldn't have been more wrong. And you can look up what people in the late 1800s thought the future would be like, and they thought people would just ride around on airships everywhere, and like bicycles with helium balloons on them would fly around, and that's how people would get around because people can't imagine what the future is actually like, which is good because we look at the past and we're like, man, that would suck to not be able to blank or have blank. So the fact that we can't predict the future, I think is very good because it would be horrible for our mental health if we
Mm,
if we knew what we would miss or not get to experience.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was it, really.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm
Thank
not
you.
you listen to that episode of the podcast. It's really good. It's called uh well, it has computer science in the title. So dude's way smarter than me on this stuff obviously, so I recommend it.
Well, this was a good conversation. Thanks, man. Have a good night.
You're welcome. What podcast? My podcast. You can Spotify, YouTube, iTunes podcast, Apple Podcasts, whatever that is. There's links to it on my profile. Oh, bruh. Okay. Does my podcast have a name? It's called Planet Peterson. It's on YouTube too, so you could watch us have the conversation. It's on Apple Podcasts now. Yeah, I don't remember when I got it on Apple Podcasts, but it is now. I'm not sure if all the episodes are. I think so.